All right, so thank you so much, AGZA, American Green Zone Alliance, for being an awesome partner and sponsor to this podcast, Roots Down, a Regenerative AF podcast. Really respect the work that you guys do in creating a just transition from gasoline to electric in the landscaping industry. We not only appreciate you being a good partner of Roots Down, but we really appreciate you being a great partner to the earth and helping steward new behaviors that can lead us towards a good, clean energy transition, especially in the landscaping industry where we need it most. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate all the awesome partnership.
Okay, well, Jamie Rosenthal here, Roots Down Regenerative AF podcast. We are here with a new and good friend. I've been just really excited to welcome new friends to the studio and get them into the podcast. We just met, was it right before Thanksgiving?
It is.
So Amanda Kahn. Amanda is a force. I'm excited to have her on the podcast today, and we're going to talk a lot about your journey and sustainability, and we have some crazy intersections, you and I, and it's really been delightful. I think meeting new people and making new friends is, I think, the most wonderful part of my life. Like, I think really, truly, it's been really great. Like, I was just saying the other day, like, how wonderful it was to have Abigail on the show. She was a new friend, and you're a new friend.
Yeah.
So I like making new friends. So welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well, tell my audience,
Yes.
your audience now,
Okay.
a little bit about you and where you come from, what your background is, like what makes you. Who's Amanda?
So who's Amanda? Wow, that's an interesting one. There's
Yeah.
many layers. However, going on your podcast and the work I do, obviously, like I'm sure you yourself, anybody who works in education or sustainability, you've worked in many other things that weren't necessarily related to sustainability or education. However, I'm so grateful. I've always gotten to get back into it. I've always been back in where I originally planned to be. Now I could not be more grateful. I literally work, breathe, eat, live. I feel like I don't know. I was just explaining to Bree earlier that I don't know where my personal life starts and my work life starts. Everything is intertwined, which is great. I'm raising 3 daughters as well, 3 kids, and I'm basically talking to them all the time about my work because I hope that I can embed that same passion for education and sustainability. And I think we spoke previously. I have a non-religious Jewish background, but that whole meaning of tikkun olam, to heal the world, that's always been embedded in me and ingrained from a young age, and it's something that I'm obsessed with. I do want to make this world a better place as much as I can while I'm here on this earth. We don't know how much time we have, but I think doing things like this and coming on podcasts like this and talking about our own experiences and what we do, the work we're in, I think that that's the fastest way to spread the word, to bring more positivity. Social media is a double-edged sword. So it's nice when you can bring more good into the world. There's enough nonsense out there. How nice to bring something like this where you can educate others by simply sharing what it is you do and work with. But as far as work, I work within global education. I have my own startup with my husband. That's separate. That's thus, I have Blended Life with Amanda. I wanted to get to that. Solomon each to my name.
How many things did you do, Amanda?
I do so many. And I think you
I was like, okay.
You're a very dynamic person, and I guess that is. It makes me feel better. I do run so many things. I do so many things. But they all are intertwined, right? They all go back to sustainability and education. So I feel like I wish I could just call myself an educator. I feel like that's what I am. But I do work within global engagement, within higher education, international education. That's kind of been my path the past 15 years, I would say. And alongside of that, I always wanted to get back into sustainability. So when I met you, I was beyond excited with the work you're doing and what you're wanting to implement and with universities ages 18 to 25, because I think that is the sweetest spot. I also love K through 12. Don't get me wrong.
God bless.
I love working with the small kids, and I think the curriculum around sustainability and regenerative agriculture needs to be geared towards them so we can plant the seeds earlier on, not just throw it at people ages 18 to 25. I think we need to explain to the younger generations regenerative agriculture from a younger age. Get them out there with their hands in the soil.
Yeah, earth care.
As early as possible.
Yeah, it's not being taught at the schools.
Right.
We've had conversations about this on the podcast, and I've talked to many people. It's kind of like they just glaze over it. It's the idea of like earth stewardship is what lives in a 4x8 raised bed box in a sad yard somewhere that's being sprayed and mowed and blowed. It's like they have no idea what earth care looks like. It's really sad. Well, let's go back. I want to talk a little bit about the global community because I'm really interested. Well, first of all, is it correct that how many languages do you speak?
So I really only speak Brazilian Portuguese and Spanish.
Only?
Basic, like Hebrew. I can get by in Israel, like basic modern Hebrew. Not biblical, okay?
That's a lot.
Semesters in university. I went to Israel, spent probably collectively 45 days. I've been there on 2 separate occasions.
Wow.
But yes, no. And also I wish if I had the time, I would love to make the time. Hindi. My husband is Bangladeshi American. He speaks Bengali, Hindi, Urdu. But he learned Hindi through watching the films because Bengali and Hindi is not, you can't understand. It's not as closely related as Spanish and Portuguese. But the amount of Bollywood Indian thrillers we watch, I feel like I should be taking Hindi on the side. And also, speaking of Hindi, India is not only has a massive population, but I think I was telling you on LinkedIn, I've been following a lot of really incredible creators on the platform that are getting more into regenerative agriculture, sustainability. Sadhguru, are you familiar with Sadhguru?
I'm not.
Okay.
School me.
Yes. So Sadhguru is an Indian scholar yogi who's quite popular in India. But he has a huge movement on replenishing the soil and healing the soil. Another thing, I don't mean to go back to Judaism because I am not a religious person.
No. It's okay.
I'm married to a Muslim who's non-religious as well. But we teach religion in an academic, spiritual sense to our kids. I want them to be understanding and loving to all backgrounds of people. I feel like that's the way I was raised. That's the way I'm raising my children. But certain things that I learned that I love, and I'll go into Urban Adamah and being a fellow at Urban Adamah in Berkeley, California in a bit. But they did teach us there that even in the Bible, right, you go back, there is always that year of rest, right? Every 7 years, you're supposed to let the land rest and rejuvenate itself. And also permaculture practices, right? We shouldn't just be doing monoculture, the same crops over and over again. But yeah, how on earth do we teach these things to our kids and put it in the education system? I know we were talking about that before, but it was exciting when I meet somebody like you or other people you've had on this podcast, because I don't feel like enough people are excited enough. But Sadhguru is one of those people I would suggest you look on YouTube and hear what he has to say about soil, because I feel like if there's a country that's in dire need of saving its soil and replenishing the earth, it's definitely India.
Oh, yeah.
It's so ancient. China was having a similar issue. China's just so ancient. They have such a massive population. And I believe at one point they only had 10% arable land that was made for farming in China.
Oh, wow.
India has a lot of similar issues. So you got to take care of and replenish and rejuvenate what it is that you do have, right?
Yeah.
We're in the positive and negative. We're running out of time here. These are conversations that should have been had, and people should be more excited about.
So I wonder what the global community is saying about all of our climate issues. And is it you speaking other languages, you being a part of the global community, you educating the global community, do they have the same anxieties? Are they looking at us for solutions? Are they saying, oh, the Western world does so much better job than the Eastern world? I'm just curious. I'm curious, what's going on there?
So I was talking to my husband earlier about my time in Brazil as an exchange student. That was 20 years ago. I don't know how that much time has passed since I was 16, but 20 years ago, I was an exchange student in Brazil. And these were conversations that already took place on a consistent, regular basis. You see public buses drive by and they're saying, conserve water, watch your water usage. A huge, massive city like Sao Paulo runs out of water. I wouldn't say all the time. It's not all the time, but it is something that the overall population in Brazil has to be very conscious about. And I feel like in the US, we're also running out of water. We don't have clean water, but it's something that nobody really talks about. I feel like it's not on people's radar. Nobody's ever mentioning it when they're brushing turn the water off. Nobody mentions taking a shower. That's a bit too long, because Brazilians do take a lot of showers, maybe 2 to 3 a day. It's a very hot country and there's not air conditioning a lot of times. So people just go in and rinse off, but they're not in there for 30 minutes, wasting up the water.
Steaming up.
Yeah, steaming the bathroom. Yeah, and also trash. Like you were saying, urban areas, how you were farming and it was taking you 60 to 70 miles to come back into Decatur to sell your produce you were growing. That's still nothing compared.
Oh, no. Like when we're talking...
Our pears coming from Argentina and our papaya coming from Brazil and bananas, Colombia and Costa Rica. It's not...
Caribbean blueberries this morning?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
However, unfortunately, I feel like things are getting... As you gain a middle class, I think this is happening in China too. Yeah. People do start consuming more, like natural resources. They start buying more. They start going out to eat more. They start getting busier and not being as sustainable. So I have not lived in Brazil in 20 years. However, I do know that it's a conversation that even started. I believe the Earth Summit or something in 1992 that started in Brazil.
Huh, I don't know.
All right. So destruction is had in the private sector. I feel like those are a lot of people, the rainforest being cut down.
Right.
It's not like the overall Brazilian population that's doing that. It's hidden. A lot of it's hidden. It's not even, it's not regulated.
Living that close to the rainforest, I would imagine Brazil, they have a little bit more, they're a little bit more in tune with nature. They probably are, born more, conservationists and stuff like that. But I just kind of wonder, going back to that, I kind of wonder, like, if the global population's really worried about climate issues as much as we are, or is this, have we started radicalizing people?
No, I do. I get the sense, and I do think, even when I'm out of the States, and especially in Europe, I was in Berlin a year ago. I think I was mentioning to you how much people recycle and think about their consumption on an individual basis is incredible. And I feel like if they're doing it over there and they're as educated of a population as they are in Germany, we can absolutely implement it here. We have way more people than they do, which is why I don't understand this hasn't.
It's kind of the problem.
You working with the government in DeKalb County, it really does need to start with the government. But like your friend was saying, Commissioner Ted Terry, as Ted Terry was saying, you've got to educate people enough. People have to be aware enough to demand this and ask for the change, and then put the right people like Ted Terry into office who are going to actually, take the steps necessary to make it happen. And then, going to back to Berkeley in California, we were in San Francisco like last year as well, and the city of Berkeley, they require everybody to compost, and I think you get fined. So you've got your recycling bin, your compost bin, and your trash bin, and it's just when you do that, and there's like this collective conscience.
Well, it becomes I think it's becomes a part of the culture.
Yes, that's it.
And once it's a part of the culture,
social proof, I believe they call it. Influence, social proof.
Yeah,
and you feel bad internally. Oh, my next door neighbor is definitely compost. Did I not compost? Then you start to feel. And that's what we don't have going in Georgia.
No, not at all. I mean, it's so much easier for everyone just to throw their garbage away and out of sight, out of mind. I just kind of want. I kind of think about the global, like as I start to travel a lot more, and my daughter's growing up, and I kind of look at the global communities, and I'm like, man, some of these people have really figured it out. Because I believe it becomes a part of their culture,
right?
And that's really one of my goals here in, the U.S. is making it part of our culture, like making earth stewardship a part of our culture. Yeah. There's really no reasons why we should be using herbicides and pesticides on our public lands. Like there really isn't. We should rewild.
Knowledge also about things such as, even my husband, he was using in the house before I got there, pesticides. Yeah. And then I was horrified when they came to spray. because I've also never owned a home. I was always an urbanite. I always like was leasing a room before I had my daughter. And even when I had my daughter, like a small 1-bedroom is fine. I just don't, what's the point of that much space? I don't understand. It's more to clean. It's upkeep. It's more electricity. It's just not sustainable. The word sustainable is a big one for me this year. How can I be more sustainable in all areas of life? But a big part of that is when you are sustainable in all the other areas, you start to think also about how much trash am I putting. And I live in a bigger house now with my husband. So I'm like, wow, the amount of extra trash you just start creating because you live in a bigger space.
That's what we are. We're just pack rats. And we get more space. We fill the space.
However, as I was talking to him, speaking of that, even the pesticides, I told the girls, you be mindful. That's another thing. Sustainable and be mindful. Be mindful. Don't take your sweets or don't eat food in your room to where it's going to attract ants. But also there's essential oils you can use to spray. Cleaning, that's a big one for 2025 for me, is making sure my cleaning supplies are cleaner. So white vinegar, cleaning that with the house. So anyway, but speaking of these things and on an international space, I think even in Italy, I was reading somewhere that they use more lemons. They use more natural things to clean with abroad because they do have way more people
and it's
living in
smells
spaces and
smells better.
More about your neighbor.
Yeah.
Because you're all sharing everything. It's not like, oh, I'm in this big house in the suburbs with this giant lawn that I'm going to spray pesticides on and it's mine.
Right.
What a bizarre way to think.
It is really weird.
It makes you feel more other. Like that's the other. This is my house. When you live collectively in an urban center, even when you have a little tiny house, you feel more like you belong with a community. And it's hard to get that sense when you do live in the suburbs, I will say.
So I want to tell the audience a little bit about, I want to deep dive. So I know we've gotten into the meat of the conversation, but I want to go back. I want to show the audience, one of my goals for this podcast is saying how your global perspective really changes you, how I think travel and seeing the world as a bigger place.
Exchange, study abroad.
So tell people, give people an idea of your experiences, what have you done? Maybe talk about Adamah. I want to know more. And I think the audience is going to want to know more about your perspective.
Absolutely. So I will say, I did want to go back to the root.
Yeah.
I think I wrote that in notes to you. I read Spontaneous Healing by Dr. Andrew Wells when I was 13. I was having a lot of stomach issues. And hear me out. Until you understand nutrition in your own body and what it is, what foods are working for you to feel your best, that's when you really get into regenerative agriculture, and understanding where your food is coming from and how important it is for soil quality because you're going to be consuming that. That whole thing, going down that hole of understanding food, made me become a vegetarian, which made me get more into yoga, which made me think more about the environment. It's just like a natural thing. When you start healing yourself and thinking about where your food's coming from, everything else, you start thinking about sustainability from a 360 lens. From there, I went to Brazil when I moved to South Florida, and I fell in love with the culture. They also cook more. So things that we consider food, like sandwiches, they're always taking time. Okay, Sao Paulo is like New York City. It's kind of crazy. But still, I feel like people are more in tune with the earth and food. And it's more, people actually cook. I just want to say real food. It's true. Americans, we just don't cook. No. We eat sandwiches and we live off of bowls of cereal like Jerry Seinfeld did in Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just like a fast-paced, they just don't eat as much processed food as well in Brazil. It's very expensive to do that, to eat frozen foods or ready-made foods. You don't really even see that there. So going to Brazil made me have a huge appreciation for cultural exchange. I work in culture, being global engagement and international education now. That's kind of been 20 years. That's where it all started to unfold. And also why I'm such a big proponent of people going abroad and having exchange experiences. 10 years later, fast forward, I got to move to Spain, work in the bilingual education system. That I saw that they were gardening a bit in the schools in Madrid. However, I didn't feel like it was enough. When I got back to the U.S. thinking, I'm in South Florida, I'm going to go back after living in Spain, I was horrified at the public education system and how little they had the kids outdoors or with their hands in the soil. It wasn't something that was, it wasn't part of any curriculum. And I thought, I can't be a part of that. I will die inside. But that's my life going into public schools in South Florida. So I found Urban Adamah. Urban Adamah in California is a place I wanted to go when I first graduated university. I ended up backpacking for 3 months in Southeast Asia. also teaches you a lot about sustainability. Anytime you're abroad, you see that people have amazing lives with way less. It doesn't mean that you aren't a go-getter, you don't work hard, you don't think about money and finance. It just makes you think about living smaller and using less, right? Not consuming as much when you see how little everybody else lives off, and they're happy. When you're in Thailand and Laos and Cambodia, and I was backpacking, so I was on a very tiny budget, sharing hostels with other people. It just made me realize how little you actually need. And it didn't make sense why we do overconsumption to fulfill a void. I feel like a lot of Americans do that. That's a big topic.
I'm guilty of it.
Yeah, I've done it from time to time myself. So anyway, the backpacking Southeast Asia, 10 years, I went to Spain. Then I got to Urban Adamah. I was there at the fellowship. I would highly recommend to anybody. It is a Jewish background, but it's like a nature-based Judaism. They do meditation, you do social justice, sustainability, you learn organic farming. I think it's 2.5 months you stay. There's 3 cohorts. There's spring, fall, spring, and summer. I was part of the summer 2017 cohort. It was the most amazing experience. I feel like that taught me so much. Everything I learned those 2.5 months is crazy. It was only 2.5 months, but it impacts me every single day since I left. From Urban Adamah, I went to work at American University. I moved to the DC area. I realized after living in Berkeley, it was kind of too crazy expensive out there. A lot of people end up staying to work around Urban Adamah.
Like ping pong balls.
I was a ping pong ball. But I was trying to get back to a more sustainable urban life. And I thought, oh my God, now that I've been in Berkeley in the SF area, I really miss Madrid. I want to get back to that. I walked everywhere. I bought local produce. I just felt, everybody who lives in Madrid as well, when you do live abroad, it's so easy to get anywhere in Spain. Everybody spends the weekends in their pueblo, like Madrid, from their hometown.
So magical. So great.
But it's so sustainable. And you don't, I was making €1,000 a month. I had my roommates. It was enough to still travel a little bit within Europe. And, it paid for everything I needed. I'm also extremely frugal from living a backpacker ping pong lifestyle. Almost my whole life, but especially my 20s. So, and then after you've been in San Francisco or Berkeley, everything else in the world seems cheap. Even DC, I swear, living in Washington, DC and having roommates, that seems half the cost of even the Berkeley, Oakland, SF area. And you don't need a car. You have the metro. So that's how I ended up back at American University, a carbon neutral university. I think they were the first on the East Coast. I think they're the only one still. Please, if anybody's watching and they know of a more carbon neutral university, but that's the main reason too. I was super excited to get back to American University. Also a ginormous international education and international affairs school. A lot of diplomats come through American University, so I wanted to be in that space again. I felt like too, a lot of the K through 12 schools in the DC area do try to implement more farming and regenerative agriculture. They don't call it regenerative agriculture for these little people, but they are trying to implement it more in the schools. They had people like gardening educators and tried to show them how food is produced. And then from there, the pandemic hit and I got into social media, became a single mom, created Sua Professora Americana, went back to my Brazil roots randomly, right? You don't know how life is going to intertwine you. But even within that, I became quite big. I got up to like 300,000 followers at one point, like teaching and educating people about American English and culture. However, what you would probably recognize that other people wouldn't, I never sold anything other than English. I had people come to me and want to give you things, right? As an influencer, you're supposed to publicize consumerism. I never did that. I'm kind of horrified to like sell something off of an Amazon product or t-shirt. Therefore, I was a very broke teacher. To a professora americana. I had many followers, but I could never sell out and, sell products that I don't actually use, that I don't truly believe in. So even to this point, when I'm, going back to make Blended with Amanda, my new social media name, it's more sustainability focused. Regardless of the topic I'm on, it always goes back to that. I know you and I talked a lot about fast fashion the other day. Yeah. That's something that you really have to go out of your way. This is O'Neill. I don't. It's probably fast fashion, but I'm trying my best to find products and designers or brands that are more sustainably focused.
Yeah, for me, it's like if I buy something, I buy it till it completely disintegrates.
Yeah.
I wear it.
Same.
I wear it to I wear my shoes till they're like not recognizable. Like
My husband should tell. My Converse have like almost a hole in them. He's like, okay, it's enough now.
Yeah, I'll buy something nice, but I'll treat myself, but I will like wear the piss out of it.
Yes, exactly. Like I don't know if you could mend my shoes. That's what I've had.
That's how
it's possible.
That's how it should be. Well, so you told us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. And cultural exchange. That's how I got back into cultural exchange, working with J1 visas at Georgia Tech with international students. And now I'm at an international education startup, Campus Community, where that's our whole focus is digital engagement within higher education.
Okay, so tell the audience, like give a paragraph. Tell the audience what that is.
Oh, yes. So Campus Community is a higher ed tech. We are a platform for universities to use. They go from looking for international enrollment when all those agents are out there trying to get students in Vietnam or China or India, right? We have everything that they need all the way through international alumni engagement. So basically it's a platform the whole way through that helps universities. My favorite part, though, which I sent you notes about, is our product called 360 GLE, 360 Global Learning Experiences. We're actually partnering with the Global Studies of Atlanta Center, I believe that's the name. So we work with Georgia State University and also Georgia Tech, giving to their faculty the resources off of 360 GLE. But everything within the 360 GLE pertains to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I gave you that acronym the other day.
Yeah.
Anybody in higher education and into sustainability, they just call it simply UN SDGs or simply SDGs. So if you hear somebody say SDGs, there are 17 of them, and they all pertain to 17 separate goals that the United Nations has for creating a greener future for all of us, right?
Yeah. They seem like kind of a lot. Like I was reading through and I was like, okay, that sounds great. That's kind of lofty. But I think they can be achievable. It's just like anything else. But there was a lot of goals. You sent me 17 of them.
Yes. I did.
We should read a couple of them.
Yeah. So they go, number 1, no poverty, 0. These are extremely lofty goals, but how beautiful if we can, like you say. I love what Joni always says. When you're an extreme person, I'm a bit of an extreme person. But when you're an extreme person, you don't have to think of the whole staircase. Like, let's just think 5%. What's a 5% change you can do this year? Mine is no coffee cups. I go to coffee shops a lot for working remotely. And a big thing that I've done is to not take the paper cups anymore.
Good on you.
Yeah. So and I bring my own when I know it's to go, which is a lot. It's these little mindful efforts that create. So 17 SDGs, the no poverty 1, 2, 0 hunger, 3, good health and well-being. That could be extremely broad, right? There's 7, affordable and clean energy, 13, climate action, 17, partnerships for the goals. But for example, when I said our GLE, Global Learning Experiences 360, pertains to those. So no poverty, number 1. We have our team went on ground in Bangalore, and we do a whole piece on microfinance. So there's these global engagement. You can just use this as resources. Say you have a small community college and there's not a lot of funding, but you do want to have a global-minded curriculum. You can simply use our 360 GLE, and then the professors can pick and choose which pieces they'd like their kids to explore, the children. University students seem like children these days, but they want their students to explore, right? So that if you're in rural Alabama or South Carolina or Georgia, you can still broaden your horizons and get a taste of what, life abroad is. Because that's the whole point of the 360 GLE is also to embed that and get you excited about life outside of the U.S. Because although it seems, I'm from rural Georgia or I'll never have the money to study abroad, that is not true. A lot of times it's way less expensive to spend a year studying abroad and,
Than in the U.S.
And then living in the U.S. for a year. So I always want to break that taboo and barrier for any student out there thinking that they're low income and don't have the means. Trust me, you have the means, and I wish I had understood that as myself as a working student in college.
Yeah, my best friend got his medical degree in England, and then traveled the world, and now came back to the States, and he's very, very doing very well for himself.
Speaking of that, I did meet when I went to NAFSA last year in New Orleans. It's the world's largest international education conference. I stopped at the Croatia booth and I learned Croatia has a program for medicine that's only $5,000 a year. I mean, you got to do all the exams. You can't just get your medical degree abroad and then come to the States. You're going to have to take all the exams and pass them to work here. Maybe even go back to school a little bit to do medicine here. But the fact that they've got a program and 100% English, people definitely need to think about higher education abroad these days. It's talked about sustainability. It's not financially sustainable for a lot of people to get their degree in the U.S. anymore. I don't think.
It's insane.
Especially when it comes to medicine.
Yeah, and then the jobs just don't match. When you get out of school, it's like the jobs don't match up. You know? And then you're in debt $300,000 for the rest of your life. I mean, you know,
I'm missing $300K. I don't know what the average.
Well, my wife's PhD costs us enough money that we'll probably never pay it off.
Yeah, point. It's insane.
I'm like, how are we ever going to pay that?
And that's really disturbing to me because I feel like everything that you stand for, everything you're wanting to do, everything that has to do with sustainability, who knows what higher education is going to look like. Like, working in it is so much fun, especially on the tech side, because you see how rapidly everything has changed. Just since I started a year ago at Campus Community, AI.
Oh, yeah.
ChatGPT. Like, the insane, like, change that we're witnessing right now, which was exciting. You were talking to Abigail. It was the other day on the podcast, hearing her talk about technology and STEM and how it can go hand in hand with sustainability. I know you were asking her what her view is, talking to the younger generations, if they're like, oh my God, if they're as anxious as us. And she said, no, that they have a lot of optimism. I think they do have a lot of optimism because they're being raised with ChatGPT. Can you imagine if we were 8 years old and could just ask? My 12-year-old, 7-year-old, and 6-year-old, they're way more advanced. And the topics they talk about, not just because I'm their mom, but because they're growing up with technology. And that's me not allowing them on the iPad.
Oh, wow.
That's just them being around, you know.
Yeah, so like they're
Gen Alpha.
Yeah, they're growing up with it, and I think it is a tool, and I think it is really our responsibility to teach them how to use it and teach them the questions to ask.
Right.
Because it could be, you know, like they say, you know, like a sword. It could be a weapon for good or a weapon for bad. I think either way, I guess a sword is probably not the greatest weapon in the world, but you know what I'm saying. Not great analogy, Jamie. But
and speaking of high tech and modern and, you know, global engagement, international, like sustainability on an international scale, the fact that more people aren't talking about Singapore is insane. Singapore and sustainability. They have such a massive population on that tiny island, and they are so ahead. They're so much further ahead of us. Everything is so clean, but you should look into them. Everybody watching this podcast should look into Singapore and how they're managing that tiny little island to be so clean and so sustainable.
I want to make enough money with what I do and go out and seek these places and see what they're doing and bring that back.
Yes.
Like, that's my whole lot in life. Like, that's, if I can do that, like, we joked the other night, my wife and I talked about, like, are we ever going to retire? I'm like, well, no, like, because I love what I do. So if it's traveling and understanding, like, getting a better global perspective on climate issues and teaching and bringing that back over to the States to get us more in line, I think that's what I want to do. I mean, people are figuring some shit out other places. Like, I'm like,
and that's what travel is. Okay, that's what I know. It's a big carbon footprint when we do take airplanes and go.
Right.
It is. However, if we're utilizing it for the greater good, like I told you, we went on a trip with my 3 girls. Right, we took all 5 of us. We went on a road trip through Costa Rica. That's probably going to be embedded in those girls for the rest of their lives. Turn the lights off. Watch your toilet paper. Make sure it goes in the trash. Think about plumbing. Think about water. How clean is it? We went to the green, what was that one area? Nosara, Costa Rica. They really got to see and experience how the entire culture in Costa Rica, like the Tico culture, everybody puts environment first. It's just embedded in the culture. So there's things like that where I feel like you can't just get that from a virtual experience and talking online. You actually got to go and stay there and like live amongst the locals, and it changes you. Even now, I'm thinking about it all the time. Like, you're thinking about your scraps and not composting all the time. I think about that too.
Yeah, I'm thinking about ways.
Have you looked at mill.com? Everybody should look at mill.com, mill.com.
So it's
tabletop. It's very expensive.
It is very expensive. God, I know.
It's $1,000, but you know, speaking of a budget, is that really important to you? I mean, it's incredible what that does if you live in the city.
But imagine government subsidizing that and buying large quantities and then getting better public-private partnership.
Help everybody.
And it's gonna because all of our food scraps are going into our landfills, and that's causing a problem, and that costs the taxpayers a lot of money, and it costs DeKalb County a lot of money, or the counties a lot of money. Imagine there just being a better partnership and us all moving the needle, together instead of separate. That's the problem with America, is that we are all we all want to be this own great version of ourselves. Individualism. Yes, that's what I was looking for. We are all just too much into that. There's no collective. There's no let's all hold hands and soup.
Beautiful too. That's what creates our creativity and innovation that we have in the United States, which, I have my daughter in Chinese school. She's in immersion school. She's learning Chinese.
God.
So half the day is Chinese, half the day is English. She's so Chinese in the way she thinks about things, and in her art designs, you can tell it's very East Asian.
I love that.
But still, there's things that even the Chinese can't beat us at, which is, I think that has to do, how can we take the worst of our cultures and dump it out, and then take the best of Chinese culture and add it, or the best of our innovative, creative sense that we have in the United States, and think about our ancestors again. I think that's a part of it too. We don't think about the past ever. You never hear Americans saying, "Oh, I went to visit the grave," or "I'm thinking about my ancestors." No, that's just, we're too much in the present. I think we should think a little bit about the past.
Yeah, I actually hang out with an anthropologist, Dr. Stephen Black from GSU, give him a plug. And we talk a lot about anthropology and how that plays a fact of just what did our ancestors, and I'm talking not just the ancestors we know, but what did past ancestors do? Why did we lose this touch to nature? Why are we not so in tune? And that, again, I think is a real big problem with us, is we're as a society, Americans are super biophobic.
Or even religion. I don't understand whether it's Islam or Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism, it doesn't matter, Hinduism. They're also embedded in nature. It's very strange when people start to lose that. Yet they call themselves, they're so obsessed with it. It's is that the way? Because I'm pretty sure nature was tied. Not that you have to be pagan by it, but there's nature-based tied to all of it.
Well, I think we have I think society, and this is global, we have done the whole ego over ego. Mm-hmm. And we have kind of separated ourselves from.
Remember that, ego over.
Yeah, we have. And I didn't, that's probably from a book somewhere. So I probably appropriated that somewhere. But honestly, it's the idea and the mentality that we are over nature. Mm. And it's I don't think we have had anything in our lifetime that's just so big, a big, huge tsunami or whatever. And people that are impacted by large.
Think about a Hurricane 6 coming. Have you heard that? Yeah, due to the warming of the, and
instead of level 5, level 6, Jesus. We almost had that. I mean, the last hurricane was almost that. Yeah, but I think once large things like large earthquakes or a large global phenomenon happened that really rattles us, we're oh shit, we're not in charge here. Something else is in charge here. I find that very fascinating. I want to say to you, Amanda, I was thinking about this earlier. I think you really embody the whole think global, act local. That's kind of how I see it. I find it, and we should definitely collab on some education material because I think about this a lot. I think about how can we, without being snooty and raising our nose up, because you're right. I think a lot of what we are trying to do is saying yes, global communities, some other communities have figured this out. Let's use that. But immediately when a rural community looks at that, they're oh, that's just highfalutin stuff, and I'm not any part of that. Right. Sorry to throw the Southern accent, but because I used to live in the sticks,
right?
And that's how they were when I was trying to teach on my farm soil practices. I remember I was trying to teach soil practices to farmers who've been farming for decades.
Right.
And they were what are you teaching us that I don't already know? I throw some 10, 10, 10 on there. Yeah. And I'm well, we should use the extension services, and we should find out where our NPK, and maybe you don't have to use it, and maybe we should graze our animals. And they're they looked at me I was bananas. I had just landed in the field from a UFO. And I think that it's the same perspective. It's we have to teach people about the global communities and how we're actually solving climate issues without being snooty about it. So
I definitely want to take out the snootiness.
Yeah, it's just not, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And
That's what I was telling to my husband too. I was like, it just bothers me so much that seems to me that I try to eat organic or as clean, pesticide free as possible for my kids, because I actually want this for everybody. I want this for everybody's kids. I want this for my friends, my children's friends and their families and other communities that are food deserts in South Atlanta. This isn't right. I don't want this just for me. And I feel like, maybe I thank God I'm fortunate enough to be able to provide like eating organic blackberries and such. But I also remember my sociology professor in university saying, you got to spend your money. Where your money goes is what changes things. So it's like, yeah, I'm in a place in life where I am able to buy organic for my kids and I don't want them eating pesticides. So hopefully me contributing my dollars to that and having the ability to, I hope that can contribute to other communities elsewhere. I
think it does.
Right.
I remember way back in the early 2000s, and organics were not a thing, and now it's become a standard. And I think the price has started to match. Like when you're buying grapes that are organic and not organic, you're talking about $1. Right. Before it was like $4 difference. So I think what you're doing is making a difference. I want to give you a chance to tell the audience where to find you.
Okay.
I definitely think we've had such a lovely conversation. I think we can go on for hours about like global stuff, because that's the one I'm most interested in, is travel. But we'll definitely do that offline. We should definitely do some more coffees, some more coffee dates.
Yes, and you gotta come to Swanee.
I will.
Swanee.
It's hard.
A Korean Indian uncle. I love my international.
It's really hard to get me OTP, but if you invite me, I'm like a vampire. You got to invite me, and I will come.
I guarantee you, it's extremely metropolitan international.
Okay.
I can get you some good kimchi.
Okay.
Vegan.
All right.
Local
Challenge accepted. You just had to invite me.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
So tell the audience where to find you.
All right.
All of your social handles, and so that way they can follow you.
That's being combined lately. I was talking about that with Bree, who also works with you. So that would be Blended with Amanda. Blended with Amanda on TikTok. Whether that stays or not, we don't know. After January 20th. Blended with Amanda on Instagram, and also Amanda Khan. You can find me on LinkedIn. Please, if you're into sustainability, connect with me. I don't feel like you can have a big enough community that's into this. I have people in Japan and Pakistan. Like, I have extremely global LinkedIn and people empowering the next generation and this generation, right? So that we can make a change. But please find me there and add me, and I'm happy to accept.
You are a wonderful human being, and thank you for gracing us with your presence today. Roots Down Regenerative AF podcast. I want you guys to like and follow. Do you like and follow? But that's fine. Okay, all right. I want you to like and follow. Good. I just had to. Are we on TikTok?
I'll find you on TikTok. I'll find you on TikTok.
Find us on TikTok. Well, it may not be around much longer, so
YouTube, definitely
YouTube. Okay. But like and follow, and thank you, Amanda, so much for your time, and let's set up that coffee date in Swanee.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. Thank you all for your time.
Take care.